content. Please do note, Ms. Mara asked us to remind you that you have your ACT test back, and you need to follow the directions. Oh, Tristan, you know they called for you to check out, right?
Yeah, I did. Not bad.
I assumed since you were checking out.
Get some Chick-fil-A. Yeah, I did that. Pretty bad.
Why did you just not
Excuse me. It's time for class. So you have your ACT test corrections. You have your ACT test. Tristan, it's not time to get it out right now. It's time to, Okay. It's your job to do the corrections and submit them at the appropriate times. Obviously, you have to submit the math one to me on,
like next month?
yeah, February 10th. So the math one is due to me on February 10th. If you have an English class right now, it's due then. The best time to do it is if you literally do 1 to 2 problems a day during enrichment, you'll be done before February 10th. You have to plan it out based on how many questions you missed, but it is that simple. 1 to 2 questions a day, and you'll be able to get it knocked out. So get it done before February 10th. Yes, sir.
We got to work out the problem.
You have to correct them.
All you have to do is just come over to the sentence and then get the correct answer.
No, dude, you watch picture on the wall and you write what they write.
Thank you.
Exactly, but you have to put a
I
sentence.
ain't never did tell you, dude, you write what they
Well,
write.
if you don't do the test corrections, you'll get a 0. Okay, so do it.
Hey, different sheet of paper.
And, well, there's a
This is a paper.
paper that you're supposed to do your corrections on. You can make extra copies or get extra copies, things like that. So if you need me to make copies during enrichment or something like that, I can make copies to you so you can have more. Yes, sir.
I need you to make copies.
Okay, I'll do that during enrichment. Jay Sean, not while I'm teaching. Remind me then, okay? So, I want to look at an active collaboration scores reminder because based on the way that y'all scored yourselves Wednesday, it's very clear to me that we're misunderstanding what I'm asking you to do in active collaboration. Because there's a handful of students that had themselves scored at like a 2 or a 3, and I had them at like 3.5s and 4s. But there's quite a few students who very much oversold themselves. I don't know why I was trying to turn that down. Who very much oversold themselves on at least what I saw them doing in class. So we need a reminder of what active collaboration is supposed to look like, and then we're going to work on this lesson. We'll probably finish this lesson and not get to the next part of what I planned. Okay, so really quickly on active collaboration, I need to focus, I need to point this out. For active collaboration, to get to a 3, do you have to talk?
Yes.
No.
Read what it says.
I can't see it.
Get out, then how about every single person get out their notebook and get out the rubric that has active collaboration on it. No, that's not too much work. That's the bare minimum. That is getting a thing out of your backpack. You expect to do too little, Jay Sean. No, it doesn't. It takes next to no energy. It takes very little time. If you have it set up like Hannah does, which is very intelligent, you have it just slid into the plastic part of your notebook, it's good to go. You can already see it. Do you need to talk to get a 3? No. In small groups, in order to get a 3, what do you have to do?
Interact with your peers.
Just do the work.
Literally read it, dude. It says student completes assignments but may make little to no attempt to understand how others are thinking. There's no talking required there. So as long as you work in small groups, you can earn a 3. Do you have to talk during the whole class discussion to earn a 3?
No.
No. What do you have to do in whole class discussion if you're not going to talk then?
Take notes.
You have to take notes. Literally, I had a student in second block who could not be bothered to pick up a pencil and take notes. That is a simple expectation, guys. If I write stuff on the board, or even if I'm just explaining something, that's probably something you should write down. If I'm taking the time and effort to talk about it, it's probably something you need to know. And if you already know it, if you're comfortable with it, you may not feel that you need to write it down, but you probably should. But if you didn't know that information, write it down. If I write it on the board, write it down for sure, okay? But you have to at least be working to get to a 3. Now, but a 3 is like the absolute minimum. If you average a 3 a day, I think you're looking at like a 70% on active collaboration. That's the bare minimum of average.
No.
Yes, 70% is a C.
Oh my God.
At the real bare minimum, you want to be looking at a 3.5. Okay, a 3.5 is going to bump you up to about
What you
an
think?
84% if you earn that every single day. What is the difference maker from a 3 to a 3.5?
3.3 and 3.5?
Uh-huh. Thank you, KP. What do you have to do to earn that extra 0.5?
That thing says
Since you're going to be all smart alecky, yes.
I ain't been smart.
Which one?
I really thought they were you were asking.
What is the mark between a 3 and a 3.5? Because this is what a lot of people are missing.
Share your thoughts.
Where are you sharing your thoughts?
Small group.
In small group. The only difference, like if you're one of the ones who is petrified or does not want to talk in whole class discussion, then you can at the bare minimum talk with your small group. And I still have, and that was another thing, I had students who told me that they did 3.5s, and I watched them on Wednesday, and I watched them even closer today to see if they were talking in a small group, and I didn't see them open their mouth once. But in order to get to a 3.5, it's not just talking in small group. How much of the time do you have to be talking?
75% class.
75%. Now, there's going to be times where you need to be writing things, you need to be thinking on your own, right? And so when I say 75%, I mean it needs to be a reasonable amount of time. It needs to be the majority of the time that you're actively talking and collaborating with your peers. Talk with each other. It's a small group. It should be easy there. Now, really though, we shouldn't even be shooting for a 3.5. We really should be shooting for engaged of 4. And what's the difference? What do you have to do to get up to a 4?
Talk.
You gotta talk where? In whole class discussions. What are the 2 options for you talking in whole class discussions?
Oh.
Asking questions, answer
Sharing thoughts or asking questions. Now you could do both of those and not take a single note and still get a 4. Or you can do at least one of those and take notes and you can still get a 4. But do not forget, because I know some people are like, well, I don't want to talk in my small group, I just want to talk out loud. Can you get to a 4 if you don't talk in your small group?
No.
No. You have to get a 3.5 before you can get a 4. You have to. So if you're not talking in your small group, but you're talking in whole class discussion, you're still stuck at a 3 because you did not talk in small group. But small groups is where you should at least be talking. Now,
5.
what average score do you need to earn 100%?
4.25.
4.25. So if you're earning a 4 every single day, you're looking at 94% on active collaboration.
What that is, Jason?
If you earn a 4.5 every day, right, then that means that you're earning actually over 100%. And I've had a couple of people in here already earn a couple of 5s showing leadership within their groups
Yes,
to
sir.
engage everybody in learning.
Thank
Now,
you, thank you.
do not forget a 4.5 does require that you're doing all 3 things of the whole class discussion. And you cannot get to a 5 if you don't get a 4.5. But someone even asked, after I said this earlier in the class during second block, they said, but Mr. Kinney, sometimes I just don't know the answer. So, is that going to hurt my active collaboration?
No, you gotta ask questions.
You just got to engage. If you talk, if you share ideas, even if you're wrong, are you still actively collaborating? Yes. If you ask questions and you don't know, are you actively collaborating?
Yes. Yes.
The fact of the matter is to share your ideas, to ask questions, to add on to people's statements, to push back on people's statements, you've got to put your brain in gear. And when you take time to think, you're going to grow and learn. I cannot emphasize that enough. You've got to think in order to grow and learn. And yes, it's tough sometimes, but the tough things are the things that are worthwhile. If it's easy, it feels good in the moment, but you're not doing anything to better yourself.
Right.
Right?
Yes, sir.
For those of y'all who play football or track, if you don't put in the work in the weight room, are you going to get stronger?
No.
Perform.
Hey, I'll be up in on some
Okay.
messed up.
If you show up to practice and you lollygag on the field, are you going to be a better athlete?
No. You go back
Okay?
there.
The same thing, gentlemen and ladies, holds true for academics. You've gotta put in the time and effort. It's the hard stuff that's going to challenge you to become more intelligent. It's gonna challenge you to become a better thinker. It's the hard stuff that's gonna make you a better person. So I don't make my class hard, but I also don't make it easy because I want you to reach your full potential. Okay?
Yes, sir.
But I need you to actively collaborate.
You got it.
So, here's our objectives today. We've already started on some of this. We want to identify populations. We want to identify samples and characteristics of interest in studies. And then we need to learn the difference between surveys, observational studies, and experiments. We've already talked about surveys. What makes a survey a survey?
People.
Something with people, something with questions, huh? Direct questions to people, right? So we have a statistical, okay, listen, hey. We have statistical questions that we are wondering about, but then we're going to ask survey questions to people to collect that data. That's what a survey is. By the way, this is M5-65, I believe. Do not forget, how many of these key terms should you know by the end of this lesson?
All of them.
All of them. We've already covered the first two. We're going to cover most of them or all of them today, okay?
Yes, sir.
So, we already talked about characteristics of interest. We talked about a sample survey. We talked about population and sample. And we already finished through number 4 in this class, correct? We finished that yesterday? For those of y'all who missed yesterday, get notes during enrichment from somebody, or watch the video that I posted for the other class where we did do this. So,
What's your name?
huh?
Silk.
Saquon. I let it go for a little bit. Come on, you are too old to think that it is appropriate to keep talking like that this entire class period. Vontae,
You
what
said
do
my
ask?
name?
If you just search my name, it is the very first thing that pops up. Okay? And I title the videos by day, and I put information about what the video is about. And I even give descriptions below that. Do you hear me talking? Did your parents never teach you when someone is talking, you don't interrupt them? Yes, Saquon. What do you need to ask? That was so important. You had to interrupt my conversation.
Because you think that was me. That was your bar. That was your bar.
I literally watched you open your mouth.
Say Shamar. Oh my life, that was your bar. Oh my life, that was your bar.
Let's bring it back. Okay. Just as a quick recap.
Why are you talking to me?
You don't get mad, bro. Hey, chill out.
Mr. Kenny get mad, bro.
Okay, stop talking to me then.
Jay Sean, don't respond. Saquon, just chill.
Stop talking to me.
I literally just told him not to respond. Stop being so childish about it. Okay. So, remember the survey, or the question, the statistical question that's being asked, because this is going to come up within the next part of this lesson, is a researcher wants to design a sample survey to determine the amount of time that U.S. teenagers between the ages of 16 to 18 spend online each day. And so we wrote a couple of survey questions. We said, how old are you? Because we only want what group of people? 16, 18-year-olds. We even said, I believe, what country do you live in, right? Because we only want US 16, 18-year-olds. And then we asked, how much time did you spend online today? We talked about the fact that if you just say, hey, how much time do you spend online each day, are people actually going to know that answer accurately? No. But could they pretty easily reflect on how much time they spent online just today? Yes. Okay. So that was kind of the idea there is, okay, we want to look at those questions. Now we're getting into activity 1.1, where we're going to learn a little bit more about what's called a representative sample and a biased sample. So go ahead and flip the page. I believe it's page M5-68 now. Does that sound right? Okay. And I need you to pay attention to this paragraph and the extra information I'm about to tell you, because this detail that I'm about to talk about Jaquan, Saquon, stop. You're too old for this garbage. Too old. Okay?
Somebody go over there.
I'm about to put them in corners like they're 5-year-old children.
What did I just do?
What did I do?
I ain't even do nothing that time.
Oh, stop.
All I did was get your mom my book so you can catch up on the words. Stop.
Okay. The details I'm about to explain to you are what caused the most trouble for my students last semester, so I'm going to add extra clarity to this. So when sample data are collected to describe a characteristic of interest, it is important that such a sample be as representative of the population as possible. You need to pay attention to this. So when we say a sample is representative of the population, that means that the sample has characteristics that are similar to the population. Characteristics of sample are similar to the population. Alright? We want the sample to have characteristics that are similar to the population. And so, if the sample is not similar to the population, we say that it is biased. One second, and I'll get to you. A biased sample is a sample that is collected in a way that makes it unrepresentative of the population. Okay? So biased means that it's unrepresentative of the population. I'm going to give clarity to that in a second. Yes, Ryan. Can you borrow a highlighter? Have you looked in the box that's underneath the desk, or there should be boxes somewhere? They're back here. You can grab like a marker or something. Can y'all check under the desk, see which desks have boxes underneath them, so I can distribute these? Alright, so that one has one. Here you go. Can you use one of those markers? You go with that? There you go. Fine. Yes, we all have a box. Oh, I see where it is. Okay. Okay, so here's what I want you to hear about this. So a student, and I'm going to use the words, the song lyrics to give more clarity to this. But a student was asking for like a real life example of what would it mean when a sample does not represent the population and it's biased. And here's a real life example where it really affected the way people understand statistics. So do you all know or have at least hopefully heard of Harry S. Truman?
Harry
S.
Truman, I know you're talking about.
Oh, so who was that?
Was he like a president?
He was a president.
Underground Railroad.
He was the, I don't remember exactly which president he was, but he was the president during the end of World War II who made the decision to drop the atomic bombs. Okay, so he had a really tough decision. Now, he became the president first because FDR died in office, but then after that, Harry S. Truman went on and ran to be the president for a second term. And when he was running for president, overall it was thought that he was a very unpopular president, and the polls predicted that he would lose the election in a heavy landslide. And he actually ended up winning the election very heavily. And here's the reason why the polls had it wrong. Back in the day, before we had the internet, before we had cell phones like we do, people had to actually go out to houses and talk to people at their house. And so pollsters went out and talked to different people, and traditionally the majority of pollsters were white males. So whose houses do you think those white males went up to?
White people houses.
White people houses, right? This was the 1940s and 1950s, right? There was a lot of racial tension, And they also did the polling during the day. Well, who's not at home during the day?
Black people, they in the field.
No, bro, it's not the 1800s.
So, yeah, first off, okay, let's also address, like we already said, that these white males probably, listen, the white males probably did not go to the black neighborhoods, but also during the day, who's not at home, even if they're going to the white neighborhoods?
The husbands.
The husbands aren't, right? Back in the 1940s, 1950s, traditionally, the dads went out, the husbands went out and earned money, and the wives stayed at home. So, look at the group, right? Listen, they completely missed, and I won't say they ignored, but they missed a whole lot of the minority vote. They missed a whole lot of the white male vote. And because they had samples, so they ended up with middle class white women for the most part, because their sample was not representative of the population, right? There's not only white middle class women in the US. Because their sample was unrepresentative of the population, they had it very wrong on who was going to get elected. And so when you have a sample that does not have characteristics similar to the population, you can get the information wrong. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
That's a real life example of a biased sample. Now, here's something that we did before, right? This is the song lyrics for Hyde by Juice WRLD. And so when we did this, I let y'all choose 5 words to start, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want you to look at your samples.
That's like only choosing one.
It's not just choosing white people, but I want you to look at the samples.
That's not funny.
Did those samples get close to the population value of 3.67 letters per word? No. Because our eyes were drawn to which words? The bigger words, right? And so were our samples, did our samples have characteristics similar to the population?
Yes.
No.
Look at those again. Are those characteristics similar to the population?
No. That's why.
Remember, they were
our
bigger,
results were wrong.
which is why the data points were to the right. Almost every data point is to the right of this parameter, right? Correct?
Yes, sir.
But if you look right here, it's not perfect, but you see how these samples are almost centered around the parameter value? It's not perfect, but it's close. And that was from the random digit table. When we use the random number generator, our samples were almost perfectly centered around the parameter, weren't they? And so what we want to notice is when we have an unbiased sample, where it's not necessarily that we're always going to perfectly hit the parameter, but those samples are going to be centered around the parameter. Remember, parameter means the what? Anyone? Saquon?
Parameter is the population mean.
The population value. And I only say that because you can have things other than means. We have means, we have medians, we have what's called a standard deviation, all those things. But 100% right, it's the population
No, I
values.
was wrong.
No, you had the majority of it right. I just don't want you to go into it assuming that a parameter is always a mean. Okay, listen. I just don't want you going on continuing to assume that the mean is the only parameter. There are other parameters. It's just a population value.
Yes, sir.
And so please notice, and I want to point this out. If I look at this, were there some of these samples that were right on the parameter for first block? Some of them were, right?
Well, I got 2. I'm confused.
I had an incorrect parameter first, and I knew that had to be incorrect, so I went and rechecked, and this is where the parameter was supposed to be. Notice, and that's what was weird to me, you see how this parameter, all the random data points were to the left? I was like, man, I must have made a mistake, so I went back and I calculated it, and this is where the parameter actually was, right in the middle of those samples, right? So if it's unbiased, if it's representative, the samples will be centered around the parameter. If it's biased, the samples will be to one side, or the majority of the samples will be to one side. And so that's the issue, right? The biased samples, is it always going to miss the parameter? No. But the majority of the time, it's going to miss the parameter, okay? That's the issue with biased samples. It's not saying that the sample will always miss, but that sampling method would mean that the samples usually miss the parameter. And so I would add that clarity here. So sampling method
Terminator.
2.
means that samples will usually
I'm gonna need some sunglasses tomorrow.
miss the population value. Yeah, do that tomorrow, you know, on the weekend when I don't have to deal with it. Usually miss the population values.
I'm gonna wear them Tuesday, just cause you said it.
Alright,
This for bias.
Jay Sean, please put those sunglasses up. Next sunglasses I see, I collect them.
Dang.
Alright?
So go on the police, bro.
Yes, sir. That's an extra detail on bias, right? A bias sample, that means that the sampling method means that samples will usually miss the population values. Is it always gonna miss?
No.
No, but it usually will, right? Bias means that it will consistently, time after time after time, miss. It will not be, the samples will not be centered. And so what's the one sampling method that we already know we have to make sure that we don't have bias in our samples? Simple what? I don't know what it said. Okay. What's the one sampling method we've already discussed that we have to reduce that bias?
You say random?
We have to have randomness, thank you, right?
Randomness, come on now.
Remember when we randomly sampled? We reduced that bias so that the samples were around the population value. Okay? So, a random sample, oh look, it's already in the book. A random sample is a sample that is selected from the population in such a way that every member of the population has the same chance of being selected. And so what are the things we can use to collect a random sample? There's two different options. Hold on the question. Say again.
Random number generator.
Random number generator
Random digit table.
and a random digit table. Are you trying to answer?
No,
Okay, hold on to that question.
No.
Just let me finish writing and then I'll answer your question.
what's the word beside usually?
Miss.
Somebody get out there, bro.
Okay? Use a random number generator, and so remember random sampling that uses a random number generator, random digit table. I should probably know these are two different statements. Two, such sampling reduces bias. When I say such sampling, I'm referring to what type of sampling? Someone said it? Okay.
Random sampling.
Say it again. Random sampling is what reduces bias.
They say such.
Such sampling. Yeah. Sorry, thank you for getting involved in the conversation, Zaria. Zaria? Wow. Z? But yeah, it's the random sampling that's reducing the bias. Okay.
I'm involved.
I know it's fun.
Man,
I was just trying to affirm her, you know, 'cause she-
I get a 5 today.
No, you know.
What? What? So one, remember random samples use random number generators and random digit tables, and two, such sampling reduces bias. So those are two different statements. I just want you to recognize that random sampling uses random number generators and random digit tables, and two, such sampling reduces bias.
Okay.
Okay. Questions, comments, concerns before we continue?
Sir.
Glad to hear it. Now, let's look at number one. Remember, what we're trying to do is find out the average amount of time US 16 to 18-year-olds spend online each day, right?
Yes, sir.
These researchers, right? So Joni and Richie were discussing strategies the researchers could use to select a representative sample. Joni said that the sample should include 16 to 18-year-olds from various states, meaning that the researchers look at different states and randomly select from within those states. Why might that help us get a representative sample of 16 to 18-year-olds throughout the U.S.?
Because it's throughout the U.S.
Okay, yes? Right, because we might not be able to get everything from all the states, but we want it throughout the U.S., so why? So please understand, right? I'm agreeing that we want various states, we want it throughout the U.S., but why would we need to make sure that we randomly select from different states so that we get a true picture of 16 to 18-year-olds throughout the US.
So it can be done.
Okay, so let's point this out.
So we want you to get for like just one area.
Okay, for just one area, because, and I'm not saying this is always true, but could students in the state of, or could 16 to 18-year-olds in the state of Alabama spend time online different than those in Florida?
Yeah.
Yes. Could students in Alabama spend time online different than those in California or those in Wyoming?
Yeah.
Okay, why?
Good.
Mindset.
Different mindsets.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
different cultures in different sections of the country, right?
And the internet is.
So New England and the Southeast and the West Coast might have different ways that they interact with the internet.
Different cultures.
Different cultures, right?
Different.
If you think about Wyoming, Wyoming has next to nobody living there. It is super rural. They don't have as much internet. So if they don't have as much internet, can people there spend as much time online?
Not for real.
Alaska, similar thing. Did you have a question, Saquon?
I was finna say what you just said. Like
Okay.
some places internet, they ain't got it like other places got it.
Right. So
Oh,
would it make sense to sample different states to make sure that we get a representative sample?
Yep.
Yes. So then here, Richie said, okay, well, how about we include 16 to 18-year-olds who live in various types of communities, like urban areas, suburban areas, and rural areas. Why would we look at those three?
Because they all live in different lives.
Yep.
They live they around different surroundings, so
They have different surroundings.
so their upcoming is different.
Their
So-
upcoming is different,
So-
so could that affect how much time they spend online?
Yes.
Can anyone give me a reason why rural 16 to 18-year-olds might be different than suburban 16 to 18-year-olds?
Because if you stay in the country, you don't have no internet.
First off,
So don't.
and I'm not saying like you can't have the internet, but there is less internet access in the country, right?
Yeah.
But
That's very true.
in suburban, you know, you got all the internet stuff. You got really.
That is where internet is
Internet
focused.
towers.
Okay, you got towers there so that you can get internet. Okay. Now remember, I gotta point this out. We're not just talking about internet on our phones, right? We can get
It's about everywhere.
talking about everywhere, but my point is like most of the time phone lines or something like that would bring internet to the houses,
Yep.
which is also why it's a struggle out in the country. But what about this also? If you live in a rural area, what's an activity that you might be inclined to do?
Go outside.
Yeah, go outside.
Go outside, ride your four-wheelers, go mudding, go fishing. And if you're out fishing,
On the block.
if you're out mudding, are you spending time online?
No. We off the grid.
We got a lot.
Okay.
Off the grid.
You spend more time than
He
they
turned off his ski.
So, would the rural America be different than suburban 16 to 18-year-olds?
Yeah.
It's different. How about if you're talking about urban 16 to
I don't know
18-year-olds?
what
Why
the-
would they be different?
What is them type of folks?
Yeah, urban.
So, like downtown Birmingham,
Oh,
big city,
yeah,
Atlanta.
They got
Oh, they they around it 24/7.
Well, maybe.
Big
But actually, do you know what
They got a
group
work
of
on the
people? Well, in
Oh.
urban.
Jehovah's
Okay.
Witnesses.
You talking about my city?
In the city, what type of people typically live in the city?
Jehovah's Witnesses.
It's either the richest of
The
the
rich
rich,
folk
or the
the poorest.
in between, sometime.
there's not a lot in between those. Usually the poorest of the poor and the richest of the rich. If you had a whole lot of poor 16 to 18-year-olds, do they have time to be on the internet?
No,
No, they gotta look for
They
food.
gotta get some bread.
They gotta get some bread, they gotta get some food. Okay, so my point is this. We need to recognize that there's different subgroups we might want to look at. So this is where the question is, list some additional strategies. Think about other subgroups of people that we might want to focus on because there might be differences in the amount of time that those 16 to 18-year-olds spend online on the internet, or spend time online, okay?
Yes, sir.
So, I want to give you 2 minutes, come up with some other strategies. You don't have to write this down yet, but I need you actively discussing, and then we'll have a whole class discussion.
Wait. Come up with strategies for what?
For strategies like Joni's and Richie's to collect a representative sample. Remember, looking at different subgroups of 16 to 18-year-olds because they may differ in some way. So let's develop some ideas.
Alright, let's do it. So,
They say you meant Romeo on that shit.
Judge Clay talking?
Clay.
That wasn't me. Mr. King.
I'm just saying. Group 6. Bring the energy down. Love that you're involved, but a little bit quiet.
Yes, sir.
I just think we like the simple shit, just 13 to 17-year-olds in various states.
I think it's if they work,
But a lot of people who are working, they gotta be working where they are on their phone. So that might be a good thing to talk about. Okay, think about some other groups.
The sample should include 13-year-olds to 17-year-olds. No, I'm making my own.
Talk to the group, make sure we have a clear understanding of what we're trying to do. So remember, there are two strategies here of looking at smaller people groups or subgroups of 16 to 18-year-olds because those groups differ in a way. What other different groups are there where students in those groups might have different amounts of time they spend online? Well, I mean, where they live at is like, you know, the states and urban, suburban, and rural areas, but like, are there any other subgroups? But that's what earlier they did. We want other strategies, right? You engage in a conversation.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. Though. Like, what's they, yeah, we'll like that too. But like, what's their whole routine through their day?
Also, you only ask me what y'all be doing every day.
What's their routine?
So
We're only looking at 16-year-olds, but we're just focused right now on
what's their man, I can't do
Please, bro, we should want to do it.
what time?
I don't know about that logged on.
Mr. King.
Thank you, baby. Thank you.
I'm a four.
Okay. So does anyone have a subgroup that we need to pay attention to? Because those two groups of 16, 18-year-olds or more groups would be different. Elise, what you got?
if they work, they don't have time to be on their phone.
So if you work or you don't work, okay? Can we agree that students who work
So if
and
you don't
those
work.
who don't work would have a different amount of time they could spend, now not on their phone, but on
The internet.
on the internet online, okay? So that could be an option. What's another group that we could look at? What you got,
Jay Sean?
Jay Sean, I almost want to call you Shaquan again. Jay Sean, what you got?
He's the fun one.
Huh? Oh, 16 to 18-year-olds who are homeschooled versus who?
Going to school.
Versus what?
The ones who go to school.
Okay, versus those ones who go to school. Can we break down maybe schooling even more than just homeschool versus those going to school? Homeschool versus public school versus private schools? Can we break it down like that?
City schools versus county schools.
Yeah, that's what Jay Sean said. City versus public, or city versus county, maybe. I don't know there'd be much difference there, but it's a possibility. But I would definitely.
It is, because some days, like, city school, like, be having 3 weeks out of school,
Yeah.
we had 2 weeks out.
City schools do less work than this.
Yeah.
And they get more days out of school.
Some of the city schools do less work.
No.
If you talk to Central or
I
Bryan,
get way more.
Yeah, I think it.
they do not. Teachers don't have that. Okay, look. Okay, so we've got homeschool versus public school versus private school. We've got those who work versus those who don't. What else could be different subgroups that we want to pay attention to those different groups? Anything else? Say again. Say it louder. So those who play sports? Okay, so is there a way that we could group together, like, maybe those who play sports, those who work, those who,
Pedestrians.
what do you think a pedestrian is?
Thugs versus humans.
Thugs versus who?
Humans. Regular pedestrians.
You know a pedestrian is someone who walks, right?
Yeah, what y'all think about?
Okay.
He's civilian.
Stop. So, anyways, moving beyond that, okay, so I was gonna say those who have work, those who have sports, or maybe someone who does choir or band, those would be people who have after-school activities versus those who don't, okay? So we can have those different groups. What you got,
Who
KP?
drive a car, don't drive a car?
Okay, 16 to 18-year-olds, for those who have children and those who don't. They don't have time. Well, hold on, pause. Hey, pause. Do we care about them being on their phone?
Say it again.
Do we care about them being on their phone?
Say it again.
What do we care about? Them being on, not technology,
On a job shit.
no, online. Hey, we focus on that.
Yo,
Okay?
man, kid.
Stop. I think someone mentioned earlier those who can drive versus those who can't drive.
Yeah, I said it. I said it.
Could there be a difference there?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's write these up here, and write these down.
What we driving, because technology, why they drive?
Wait, so what were we
It
doing?
doesn't matter if you're on technology, it's if you're on line.
Line.
Pay attention to the details. So, we've got, what are the things? Homeschool versus public school. Y'all playing too much and not writing this down. Why
I'm writing.
this
Look at
down?
my I'm getting my active collaboration points.
Okay. So homeschool versus public school versus private school, that was one of the ones we said. We also said,
Poor people
After school.
versus rich people.
did we actually say poor versus rich?
I don't think so. No.
I don't think we did, but should we say poor versus rich?
Yes.
So, do you know what we call the difference between like lower
Wealthy.
class, middle class, and upper class?
Yeah,
One's
wealthy,
broke, one's mild,
in between,
broke,
and
then
poor.
one's-
Okay, no, listen. That's called your socioeconomic status, or SES.
They call
So your SES, or your lower class, middle class, upper class, that could be a difference. So
minorities and majorities.
Bro, I don't think that.
I'm in the lower class. Like I'm so broke it don't make no sense.
So lower, middle, and upper class.
Cash money.
What else did we say?
People for the country versus people not.
Well, that was up here with Richie,
Okay, well, okay.
right?
Yeah.
What else did we say? Drive and can't drive?
Yeah.
Getting in trouble and not getting in trouble.
I think the last major one we said was if they have like after school activities or don't.
Yeah.
So
In jail or out of jail.
work,
That's a good one.
work, sports,
We can't use that, Mr.
other, no,
Wow.
other extracurriculars.
That's effective though.
Vontae got a question.
Hold on. Other extracurriculars or none.
But he got.
Could male and females be online different amounts?
Yes.
Yes. The reason why I would say no to being in jail or not, because the vast majority of 16 to 18-year-olds are not in jail.
You crazy.
So,
No, that's a lot.
Man, juvenile.
Most of them are in jail.
Man, one of the little boys that ran away.
Vontae, what's your question?
It's unfair.
No. Then they're not a 16 to 18-year-old living in the U.S.
They dead to you
It
in
depends though, it depends.
Okay.
Some of my dad.
Single.
Yeah, single and not single.
single and taken.
Okay, you can put that on there. I would agree with that one.
Yeah, because if you single, you by yourself more, so you doing more stuff. But
Lonely, yeah,
but if
lonely.
you take it,
Yeah, lonely.
you and your girl ain't on the internet.
So, I'll point this out.
Baby.
Listen, remember, listen up. These are all the answers. What do we need with our answers, though?
Random.
Why?
We need the why. We need random sampling, but we need the why. Why are we listing all these different things? Because each of these
Play a factor.
groups
And
So
so
we
could
have
be
a
what?
difference.
Could be different, right? So,
I'm
each
actually,
of these groups,
we write this under still the same thing.
yes, each of these groups could be different. So we want to make sure the groups are included. That's not how you spell included.
INC.
To represent the population. Please remember, the whole point is that we want our samples to do what for the population?
Very.
Be right now.
If we randomly sample, we will get these kinds of samples.
Non-biased.
Okay, and if not biased, they are, starts with an R,
Random. Representation.
representative. Remember, that's why I put this final detail right here.
Oh, I thought it was.
Represent the population, that's why you.
We want our samples to represent the population. If we don't have randomization, they will not be representative of the population. If we don't pay attention to these different subgroups and we miss one of those groups, then our sample will not represent the population. Yes, Fonte?
You know, right now we have to fix, when we have to fix sentences,
Say that one more time.
when we have to fix, like, corrections of sentences.
I don't know what you're saying. People are talking and I'm not clearly.
That right now, you know, how we had to like they used to mess up sentences and we had to
Yes.
fix them up, yours messed up.
What did I mess up?
Mr. Kenny, you said the groups could be different, so we want to make the groups are included.
Make sure the group, make
Make sure the groups are included.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So we want to make sure the groups are included to represent the
He's a
population.
math teacher, not an English teacher.
I think you'd be surprised generally how decent I am, but I didn't go back and reread, that's my fault. I'm just saying, my mom's an English teacher.
For real. What's
For
the-
real.
How many teachers, you know,
It's just my mom and I.
Johnson?
Your mom's still teaching?
Mhm.
What school did you teach
Big seven.
She teaches in, well, just outside Montgomery.
In the last
Or-
one. You said Montana.
Montgomery, the capital of the state of
Yo-yo.
Alabama.
You from
Yo-yo.
Don't raise your voice.
No, I lied to you.
Yo-yo.
You crazy.
Oh,
Ain't no nigga on me.
yeah, I know you want to
Talk about your boy.
Your face ain't bad.
Okay. So we're here now looking at number 2. Sharice suggests that.
Can I read it?
Yeah, he wants to read it.
Can I read it, please?
Sure, go Saquon.
Sharice, give me some respect. Shh. Sharice suggests that the researcher could post the survey online and then distribute the link to the survey to the students after school on Friday as they are leaving the building. Does this method result in? Dude, I know how to read it. Result in a representative or a sample. Explain your reasoning.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you 30 seconds. I want you to think on your own. Listen, silently think on your own if this creates a representative, and I will say it should be a representative or a biased sample. And I want you to think about why. So you don't write it down, 30 seconds, think on your own. Make sure you include that word biased, right? It's a representative or a biased sample. But 30 seconds, think on your own, is this going to create a representative or biased sample? Then you're going to talk in small groups. 30 seconds starts now. Silently think about the answer to number 2. And in about 20 more seconds, you'll talk with your whole group, or your small group.
Can we, oh,
Back up?
Well, you may be wrong. I'm just trying to help you realize is it representative or biased. All right, start talking to your small group for 90 seconds. Let's come up with an answer.
wait. They talking about the same, shit, Sharice talking about the same thing, these,
not including everybody.
Yeah, they-
Okay, instead of just being
Be
online.
prepared to explain why.
Posting online.
no,
Saquon, for someone who gets upset with other people not showing their respect, you will not respect other people. I literally slammed your hand down to stop him from talking. How was that respected?
I'm sorry. I should see you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so you've had time to think on your own, you've had time to talk in your small group, so everyone should have ideas to get involved in the conversation. So go on, I really do appreciate how involved you are. I want to give everyone else a chance who hasn't been as involved though. Do we think this is biased or representative? Okay, so Rye thinks it's biased. Why do you think it's biased? Okay, because not everyone's going to do it. All right, does anyone want to add on to or push back on that? I'll go KP.
Same thing to it.
Okay, so you're not adding on to or pushing back on. Ryder?
Because if it's after school, some people might like stay and do like sports or something and not get it.
So if it's as people are leaving, if you stay after school for sports, you're not going to get the survey? Okay.
It's a link, bro.
Saquon?
Oh, it's biased because
It's
it's just, bro.
Oh, excuse me.
I wasn't talking
Gentlemen,
while you
gentlemen.
said your answer, bro.
Thank you. That is very accurate. He did not talk while you were talking. Be respectful. Saquon, go for it. Bryson. Saquon. No.
He's still talking.
Bryson. Are you serious?
Let's go school.
But it's biased because everybody not getting it. It's just them folks at their school that's getting it.
Okay, so I will point this out, and because this is something that Saquon did ask about, are we still looking at the same survey idea or statistical question answers? Yes. And so we're only looking at this one school, so it's very clearly biased in that regard. Now, let's just assume we can only look at that one school because it is moving forward, because I told you that earlier, but we're only looking at Sharice, and so, oh yeah, I mean, actually, I will say that could go to multiple schools now looking at it this way, but it doesn't feel like a great design for it.
Right.
I would agree with that. All right. So is anyone want to push back and say, no, I think it is representative? Everyone said biased?
Yeah.
All right. Are there any other reasons that we might think that this is biased?
No.
That's it? Okay, so some reasonings that we should be putting here, so we're very clearly agreeing that it is a biased sample.
Oh, I got another reason.
What you got?
It's I'll be school on Friday, and they gonna send a link online. Some of those people probably got a lot after when they got to school.
No doubt.
So how long you're online is different on Fridays than maybe other days? You might be going out, hanging out with friends, so you're not gonna be online.
That is
Okay,
true.
so Friday might be different than other days.
Any day for real.
Friday might be different. From most days. Okay, we had earlier that, and so it's not even necessarily just students who have sports, but students who have sports or other extracurriculars might miss this survey
Shoot, weekend versus weekday.
with after school. Extracurriculars won't get the survey.
Friday, how long you been doing it?
And I will point this out. If you have an after-school extracurricular, are you going to spend more time or less time online than the other group of people?
Less
Less
time.
time, because
unless
you
you're-
literally have less time to be online, right?
But some after school activities be online. Like we got a little what's it called? A little team that play video games.
Okay, that's a very, very small group. You're talking about why can't I think of the
Talking about
name?
like 6 people.
Yeah,
Just say gamers.
Yeah, but there's an actual term for it. I can't think of the name. Esports, thank you. The esports club.
Yeah, they be online
Okay.
at the school activities.
Hold on, we can add another one in tonight. Okay, so hold on to that. What were the other ones we've already said? So we said these two, what else?
Shoot.
Man, what you trying to spell?
I can't fit all this on the.
Got that right, right?
all this on my board.
Where?
Get survey.
Nigga, nobody ain't putting it.
Yes, students with after-school extracurriculars won't get the survey. So sorry, I forgot the word the.
Yeah, it'd be
You and your stuff messing up.
That was intentional, it was being lazy, sorry.
Yeah.
Alright,
He's stressed out.
Check where you go to the smile doctor.
number 3, what was something we already said about why this would be a biased sample? Say again. Were those the only things we said?
Oh,
Okay. So Janiyah, what else did you have?
What about students that are absent?
my bad, I'm sorry.
So I don't know that any, I mean, yes, we'll just miss that group who are absent. I don't know that they would necessarily be different. But that is something you could write up there. I'm not gonna write that as one of the big ones. Like, cause here, the thing is like, Friday definitely might be different than other days, right? Students with extracurriculars definitely might be different. There's no way to know that the absent students would be different.
You got people studying.
Yeah.
I don't know, just like that.
Okay.
Custodians.
Okay. I don't know that that'd be different one day or the other, but let's think about this. This is something that came up in second block. They said that when you leave, some students have less internet access at home. If you don't have internet access, can you answer the survey that's online?
Nope.
Nope.
Did you?
Yeah, I said it.
No, he did, dude.
Once they raise his hand, Mr. Kids.
All you gotta do is go to the public library.
Who's going to the public library to fill out a survey about time spent online?
Me? If it's for a grade, you gonna have to do it. What you said?
I'm gonna burn out.
He can't even wait.
Yes.
I'm gonna burn out.
Burn out.
I don't know.
I don't think I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? I said,
Okay.
Going after school, some have less. Okay, that's good.
Doing the survey after school. Yes, contact.
You gotta.
Yeah, shut up.
Yo, I was gonna tell you this. If we continue, listen, I'm overall being more chill today than I would most days. If we continue to talk like this when we have to move more quickly, you're gonna start to lose out on enrichment time. Because I'm not letting y'all fall behind other classes. So, when you stop playing quite so much, I like y'all being involved, but we also need to be a little bit more focused. Vontae, what were you gonna add? Okay. The last thing I would point out is this. Who's more likely to actually do this survey on their own time? Someone who's already online or someone who doesn't get online very often? Someone who's already online. So if we're focused on those who, if we do it this way, if you're responsible for filling out this survey, you're mostly only going to get the people who are already online a lot. So your data values, your sample values will be much higher than the population characteristics. So, if students are responsible, for doing on their own time, for doing survey on their own time. Sample will mostly have people that got internet. Not just internet, but will mostly have those who are already online a lot.
And you can say people that don't have phones.
You could break it down into those who have phones or don't, yep.
I mean, Cause the parents might have internet, but they're not allowed them to get
Yep.
on.
Yeah, someone brought up strict parents versus not very strict parents before for something like this as well. So we are saying that we're looking at a bias sample for these 4 major reasons. Yes, sir. KP. Oh yeah. KP. And so we want to recognize like there could be a lot of problems if you do the survey this way.